Hi everyone, for learning outcome number 2 of module 5, we're going to be talking specifically about the capillaries, sinusoids, which are a specific type of capillaries, and the capillary beds, which are formed by the capillaries. So let's get started. As we can see from this image, this is going to be an artery that is coming from the heart, bringing blood rich in oxygen and nutrients, and it's going to move all the way down to the organs. And once it gets to the organs, these arteries will become smaller and they will form the capillaries, and this mash of capillaries is called the capillary bed. And once the blood exits, it will exit through a venule, which is the smallest type of vein, and then the venule will merge to form a larger vein or a mid-sized vein, and then a large-sized vein, and it goes all the way up to the heart. Now we have 3 main types of capillaries, as we can see on this image. These are going to be the continuous, the fenestrated, and the sinusoid. The continuous capillaries, they're going to have an endothelium that will completely surround the lumen. And there are going to be tight junctions and desmosomes that are going to connect these endothelial cells. Next, we have the fenestrated capillaries, which are going to be capillaries that will contain windows or pores in their walls, as we can see over here. And this is going to be due to an incomplete or a perforated endothelial lining. And then we have what we call the sinusoids, or discontinuous capillaries, which will resemble the fenestrated capillaries that are going to be flattened and irregularly shaped. And in addition to being fenestrated, the sinusoids, they commonly have these gaps between adjacent endothelial cells, and the basal lamina will either be thinner or absent, as we can see from this image. So there's lots of space in this basement membrane. So it's an incomplete basement membrane. And as a result, the sinusoids, they will permit the free exchange of water and solutes, such as plasma proteins, between the blood and their interstitial fluid. And the blood will move through the sinusoid slowly, and this will maximize the time available for absorption and also for secretion across the sinusoid walls. And these sinusoids are going to be found in the liver, in the bone marrow, in the spleen, and the adrenal glands. So they're not found throughout the body. This is why we call them specialized capillaries. Now, there are 4 mechanisms that are going to be responsible for the exchange of materials across the walls of capillaries and sinusoids. These are going to be diffusion across the capillary endothelial cell, and mainly these are going to be lipid-soluble materials, gases, and water that will be exchanged by osmosis. Then we have diffusion through these gaps between the adjacent endothelial cells, and this will occur in all types of capillaries. As we can see, even the continuous will have a space which is called the intercellular cleft. And through these spaces, we're going to have water and small solutes, and we're also going to be able to have larger solutes passing through the sinusoids because they do have bigger spaces between the endothelial cells. The third one is diffusion through the pores in the fenestrated capillaries and in the sinusoids, and these are going to allow water and solutes. And lastly, we have vesicular transport by the endothelial cells, and this vesicular transport can be either through endocytosis, when it enters the blood vessel through the luminal side, or exocytosis, when it exits the blood vessel and passes through the basal side, reaching the interstitial tissue. And examples of these will be water and specific bound and unbound solutes. Here we're going to look into more details what happens at the capillary bed in regards to exchange of gas and nutrients. So the capillary bed is going to be this network of capillaries that will be supplying blood to a specific organ or an area of the body. And the blood flow through this capillary bed can vary considerably depending on which organ we're talking about and what the activity of that organ is at a specific time. Now, capillaries are the site of nutrient, waste, oxygen, and carbon dioxide exchange with the interstitial tissues. And we have here an arteriole, and this arteriole will give rise to dozens of capillaries, which will then empty into several venues, and blood will flow from the arterioles to the venues, and it's going to be at a constant rate. But the blood flow within the capillary bed, it will vary considerably, like I mentioned earlier. So smooth muscle cells within an arteriole, they're going to cycle between either contracting or relaxing, and this will happen about a dozen times each minute. And as a result of this contraction and relaxation cycle, the blood flow will occur in a series of pulses rather than a steady stream of blood flow. And the effect is that the blood will reach the venues by one route at one time and by a different route one moment later because of this difference in contraction and relaxation cycles. And this process is going to be controlled at the tissue level, and it's going to be called autoregulation. So autoregulation basically is telling that the blood flow will be controlled by the contraction and relaxation of the arterioles once it's sending blood into the capillary beds. Now, the artery that takes the blood from the arteriole to reach the capillary bed is called a meta-arteriole. And these meta-arterioles, they're going to have what we call a precapillary sphincter that will also control the blood flow within the capillary bed. So these are going to be smooth muscles, as we can see here from this image, that will either constrict or relax, and they're going to be present in the capillary beds, as we see over here, and they are going to control the amount of blood that's going to be passing through the capillaries. So here we have, if it's a consistent blood flow, for example, we have a solid line arrow, and if it's a variable blood flow, then we have a dashed arrow. And this, of course, is just a representation of what can be happening. So either it's going to be occurring slowly if we are at rest, for example, or it's going to be occurring fast if we are doing an exercise. Now let's cover the venous valves. The blood pressure in the venues and the medium-sized veins, it's going to be so low that it cannot overcome the force of gravity to bring the blood from the lower limbs up to the heart. So for example, when you're standing, the blood returning from your feet, it must overcome the pull of gravity to be able to reach the heart. So in the limbs, the medium-sized veins, they will contain what we call a one-way valve that will form from this infolding of the tunica intima, as we can see over here. And these valves, they're going to act like the valves in the heart. So this means that they will be preventing the backflow of blood. So valves will compartmentalize the blood within the veins, dividing the weight of the blood between the compartments. So once the blood reaches, for example, this compartment and gets to the next compartment, the valves will close, and that will prevent the blood from going back down. And as long as the valves function normally, then any movement in the surrounding skeletal muscle will squeeze the blood toward the heart. And this mechanism is called a skeletal muscle pump. So for example, when you're on an airplane and you're sitting for a very long period of time, this means that your valves are not functioning properly. And this is why when you get off of the plane, if you have a very long flight, your feet are swollen because the muscles, let's say for example, these muscles over here are representing the gastrocnemius, which are your calf muscles. When you walk, these muscles contract, and by contracting, they stimulate the valves to work. And when you're not walking, then the valves aren't working, so the blood has a hard time going from your lower limb all the way up to your heart. So this is why they recommend that if you're in long flights, that you actually walk on the plane a little bit to be able to get the valves to work. But of course, there's always genetic factors, or if you get older, there's a high probability that your valves will not work as well. And when this happens, then it causes these varicose veins that we can see over here on this image. And here on this other image, we can see that the valves remain open, and therefore the blood that's supposed to go up towards your heart is actually able to move down and stay lower in your body. And this is what causes the varicose veins. And this is also being represented here on this model, where we can see how the valves, they're not functional, and the veins are also extending laterally and being compliant with the expansion and the increase of blood volume in this area.